if you're going to focus on 2025, let it be intimacy. Intimacy is about so much more than just sex. Most of it leads to sex, sure. I'm talking about, how do we say hello to each other? How do we say goodbye in the morning? Literally, I've had people in my office create some kind of like fist bump thing. That's fine.
Hello, everyone. It's Bernadette Joy, and I am here truly with one of my favorite humans on earth. And I'm not just saying that. We see each other every week, and we chat all the time. And she is one of my favorite people, not only because she's a great person, but she's an amazing business person and she's a thought leader in her space. And so I'm going to introduce you to my friend Danielle. Say hello.
Hello.
And Danielle is the founder and lead therapist at Hope Station and Hope Psychotherapy. And she and I have gotten to know each other over the last couple of years. And I thought in 2025, who better than to have a conversation about monies, coupling, relationships, the things that I think a lot of us are really focused on in 2025. And so without further ado, I'd love, Danielle, for you to introduce yourself, who you are, and what you do.
Hi, as you know, I'm Danielle Boucree. I'm a psychotherapist, which just means really like I take everybody's stuff from their past and I dig into it a little bit and relate it to what's important now and how it impacts them now. I am the owner of Hope Psychotherapy, so I do see adults and couples in my clinical practice. I love my couples work because it's so rewarding to see a couple who's come in conflict and just change like maybe one little thing, and suddenly like everything else just gets better. And it's nice to see that gratitude, not to me so much, but for each other. So
Oh, I love that.
yeah.
Yeah, that must be really life-giving to you to see a couple who maybe was coming in and they're not like jiving and then seeing that transformation. I love that. So
Yeah.
here's what I think is interesting that I don't think a lot of people know about you is that you weren't always a psychotherapist. This is not your first career. So can you tell people more about your journey to becoming a psychotherapist?
Yes, absolutely. So I started off after all of the education stuff, college and whatnot. I started off in corporate marketing and loved it at the time. But after 10, 20 years, it started getting a little bit dull for me. And it wasn't rewarding anymore. And I started feeling like there were signs everywhere that isn't what I should be doing, but I was well trained. So I kept doing it for a really long time and wasn't happy. So at the ripe old age of 35, I started asking myself, what are you doing? What is it that you love to do? It isn't this, but it's got to be something else, right? So I wasn't just going to jump off the lily pad. I was just going to jump to
Mhm.
another lily pad. So Bernadette, honestly, I spent 8 years in exploration, asking people who knew me, like, what do you see as my superpowers? Asking, really reflecting upon myself of like, what brings me joy? I did all the things, read all the books, I did all the reflection, and what came out. And it's actually there's actually a line that goes from corporate marketing to mental health, and it's people, right? In order to sell something, you've got to understand people and behavior. And at the end of the day, that's what I loved about marketing. I didn't love the financial spreadsheets. I didn't love giving the big presentations. I just loved understanding why people did what they did. So it very
Mhm.
naturally went into this place where I went back to school to be a clinician. And I love
Mhm.
the work that I do now. I'm with the place where I think a lot of people strive of like, don't tell anybody, but I do this even if they didn't pay me.
Mhm.
you
Mhm.
know,
Mhm.
so it just feels
Yeah,
natural.
I love that. I would venture to say that what I know about you is that you're a great listener and I think you genuinely spend time trying to understand people's stories. And so I can see the translation from marketing, which in my opinion is kind of like fancy storytelling. And and now you have this opportunity to help people reshape their narratives and reshape what the ending could be for their life story. So I love that. And I always knock Danielle on this. I'm like, you need to tell people that this was your background because if you meet Danielle, if you ever meet her in person, she's just like When I say that I want to be Danielle when I grow up, like when she walks into a room, it's like, wow, I don't know what that woman does, but she has her shit together and she looks really professional. And I'm like a mess all the time. And what people don't know, right, without just looking at her, it's just like, no, she went through this whole transformative journey on her own. She spent this time exploring. She didn't always have her stuff together. She was doing this while she was raising young kids
Mhm.
too,
Yep.
right? And so I wanted y'all to get to know more of Danielle, the person and the human, not just a psychotherapist on this, because I really appreciate that she's been very transparent about that journey along the way. And she's such an example to me because when I met her, now 4 or 5 years ago, I think at this point,
Or
right? Like
yeah.
20,
Yeah.
yeah, is, she had gotten into the psychotherapy space, but she was working for someone else. And I have had the honor of watching her now open up her own practice, open up her own brand, have her own philosophy around how she wants to have her practice. And so, just so y'all know, like, there are steps, there are levels to this game. You don't just like one day wake up and be like, oh, I'm going to be a thought leader and I'm going to be the best therapist there is. Like, there was a journey that happened along this. And so let me ask you this: is along the way, did you ever have any doubts, and what did you do? Like, were we like, oh, is this a good decision? Like, should I not go into therapy? Should I not open my own practice? Like, where did you have doubts and what did you do?
Yeah, I have to say, going into the mental health space, once I decided to do it, there were no doubts. And I'm like an eternal learner. So I I loved going back to school. That whole process was great for me. But
I can see
then
that because you're such a nerd.
kind of, kind of. I make it look good though. No, I'm kidding.
That's right. You're a hot nerd, but you're a nerd. Yes. Like when I say this to the nerd, like she's always like, "Oh, let me tell you about this research. This like,
It's so
should I
cool.
write a white paper on this?"
Once I got out here, and I remember specifically, there was this one lady whose office I was borrowing. So she was coming out and I was coming in, and she was like, "Hi, my name is like Sally Smith, and I'm a psychodynamic therapist, and this is what I believe in." And blah blah. And she gave me like a whole dissertation on who she was, and I was like, "I'm Danielle," and I'm using the office like I was like, like I don't have my spiel, and I don't know all the fancy words. I felt
Mm.
so defeated in that moment. Um, and but I got it together. Like I got my pitch together. I knew I had the goods. I just wasn't refined yet. And then
Mm.
I have to say the time I dove into self-doubt in a big bad way was when I moved from being working in a group practice to starting my own, because I did ask a lot of those questions of like, who am I to be doing that? Because I'm a transitioner, right? So I've people my age have been in this for like 20, 30 years, and I was just in it for a couple of years. And so I was just like, not sure who's going to believe me. But when you do good work, it kind of backs up. You see all of the people whose lives that you're actually like changing. And
Hmm.
that feeds me. That feeds my soul.
And now you've been doing it for, is this your second or third year?
On my own, this is my third year. Oh, wow. Look at that.
Right?
You're
I
set.
know. Doesn't it feel like you're just having this conversation about when you were about to start the practice and now you're in your third year?
I know. It's crazy.
That's amazing.
Crazy good.
So I'm just so proud of you. And I'm just so like proud to know you that you've taken these leaps. And what I wanted to have you talk about specifically today, now that people know you, is this gem here,
Yes.
the couples therapy toolbox. And I'm saying this is a gem because look, y'all, me and AJ like have actually been doing it. Like
I
I'm not
love
just like
that.
promoting a thing just for the sake of promoting it. Like this is something that AJ and we have a little calendar invitation every Sunday and we go through one of the exercises. And AJ and I have been married for 13 years and I promise you we have still a lot of things that we have to work on.
Yeah.
So I found this to be really, really helpful. And so for y'all to check this out, I would love for you to purchase it on Amazon because I really think it's worth it. But for those of you who want to learn a little bit more about it, other than that, I love it and I think it's definitely useful. Can you tell folks what this is and what
Mhm.
inspired you to create this?
Yeah. Yeah. So I've been working with couples for pretty much my whole career. all 5 years, my whole career. And I started to see the same things coming into my office. And quite honestly, like once you get past the crisis, the thing that brings you into a therapist, really then it's about like how do we build the foundation of this relationship or sometimes rebuild it so that we can get to that next level and stay strong and keep moving. I always tell my clients, I don't intend to be in your life forever. I should not be in your life forever. I'm here to give you the gems that you can use later. I started saying the same things to my clients over and over again and realized there were trends, there were things that people could use to go from we're a good couple, we're good communicators, we're fine. I hate that word, but I'm going to use it. We're
Mhm.
fine to we're next level. Like we are feeling really good and really connected. And I think the culmination of all of the exercises, the 75 plus exercises in the book, in the workbook, bring you to that next level. It allows you both to dive in and commit to each other and really like get to know each other and each other's perspectives a little bit better.
So I love the way that it is broken out into, because you go into each chapter is very simple in kind of the theme for that chapter. So you have the fundamentals of a healthy relationship. And then starting in chapter 3, you have specific things. Chapter 3 is build trust. Chapter 4 is communicate effectively. Chapter 5 is establish respect, which I don't think we talk enough about in terms of like what actually is respect. So let me get back to
Yeah.
that in a second. Chapter 6 is create healthy boundaries. Chapter 7, healthy conflict. Chapter 8, foster an equal partnership. And chapter 9, nurture intimacy. So here's my question for you, Danielle.
Mhm.
If nothing else in 2025, because I do feel like for me, 2025 is a very special year because I'm turning 40. So I have all these things I want to do in life. But I think 2025 seems to be like a pivotal year for a lot of folks. And so, of all of these things, if there was kind of 3 areas that you think people would most want to focus on 2025, where do you think people should spend their time as a couple?
Number one, part A, B, and C. The most important thing is the chapter on communication. It feeds into really a lot of the other parts, right? So if I can communicate my boundaries, if I can't communicate my boundaries, first of all, like you won't obtain the boundaries or people won't respect your boundaries if you can't communicate them effectively, right? So
Mhm.
communication kind of seeps into a lot of different parts. So that's the first one for sure. The second
Well,
one,
let's pause
oh,
on that for a second.
mhm,
So I want to deep dive into that more because you're a marketing person,
I am,
right?
I am.
Former marketing person and now therapist is, let me tell you, a lot of my clients think they're communicating effectively. And without even being in the room, I already know they're not.
Yes, yes.
So when we say, so it's one of those things where we say, okay, communicate effectively, but what does that even really mean? So what does effective communication in a relationship? What are the signs? Or maybe it's even easier to say, well, what are signs that you're not communicating effectively? Maybe we start there. How do we know that we're not communicating effectively?
Well, if you feel like you're not being heard by your partner, you're not communicating effectively. It's not their
Mhm.
fault. It's yours.
Ooh, well, that's a hot take. What do you mean, Danielle?
Hot
I
take.
I am very clear. If they don't hear me, that's their fault. What do you mean?
No, no, no. I mean, the onus is on you, I guess, is what I'm saying. Because if if the person on the receiving end isn't picking up what you're putting down, it's not because they don't want to, it's because they can't. So you have to rephrase it, right? It's okay that they don't understand what you're saying the first time. Find a way to help them understand. And unfortunately or fortunately, that means leaning into how they understand, how they receive information, right? If I
Mhm.
have a partner with ADHD, for example, right? And I'm talking and I'm trying to do all the things and I'm making all these points and I'm going all over the place. For somebody who has difficulty focusing, like, stop talking because I'm not receiving the information anymore. And you have to respect that in your partner. I
Mhm.
see a lot of
Mhm.
couples who want one or both sometimes have ADHD, and it makes communication harder, not impossible.
Okay, so 2 things I just picked up from what you're saying that I am going to immediately implement myself is, like you said, if I'm not being heard, sometimes they can't. Which is a hard thing for a lot of people to understand, especially I would say, not to bring politics into today's conversation, but like sometimes people literally can't hear what we're saying, no matter how many times we say it or whatever we say it. So, for finding ways to rephrase in a way that it can be heard is where we can pick up some of the onus. But the second thing that I think is really interesting about what you're just saying right now is communicating effectively. I'm going to say sometimes I don't know that we even know what we're trying to communicate. So part of the thing that I think a lot of us are doing right now, and probably I'm doing it as we speak, is just be quiet. Like maybe communicating effectively is saying less.
Yes. Yes. Listen a little bit more.
Listen a little bit more, say a little bit less. Right now, one of the big books that are out there is Mel Robbins' Let Them. And, you know, I haven't read the book fully yet, but from what I've heard of everyone talking about it, it's like let them marinate. Like you don't have to keep
Yes.
talking and making more noise for them to not be able to
Yes.
process what's being said. So in actuality, a lot of us we think that saying more words is going to make it clear, but actually maybe saying less. And I'm going to use an example today. I've started my improv classes, and one of the tenets in comedy is economy of words. That actually
Mm-hmm.
a joke is funnier when it takes less words to get there.
It's really interesting.
Right? Some of the best jokes are one line, get straight to the punchline
Yeah.
kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I think the economy of words applies to what you're saying. If you want to communicate effectively, instead of giving them a 10-page dissertation like you've received before, is what is the way that I can say this in the fewest amount of words and then let them process. If you're enjoying this content and want to actually take real action towards crushing your money goals, check out my new book. It is Crush Your Money Goals, 25 habits that you can use starting today to pay off debt, save, invest, and reach financial freedom. It's jam-packed with all of my best tips as a debt-free millionaire and your new money mentor. Check it out at crushyourmoneygoals.com or head to Amazon or wherever you buy books. Grab yours today.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So,
Yeah. And
okay.
people I want to piggyback on that. A lot of
Yeah.
people want to be right when they're trying to communicate with their partner. Imagine that. So they spend so much time trying to prove their point. And like you said, with more words, like they just give more examples. And remember this time, and you did this, and remember this time, and this time, instead of just saying it one time and letting it marinate. But I also want to piggyback and like, in order to communicate to another human being, whether it's a partner, friend, child, even, like you have to understand yourself. So that's why one of my first sessions with all of my clients, I'm like, get a notebook, start journaling. Because if you don't understand how you're feeling, you can't expect anybody else to understand it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So,
I'm going to digress, but because now I'm going to make you my therapist for 5 minutes here. Is I think that's such an important lesson for me personally to hear today, because even when I talk about like things on social media and communicating effectively on social media, I shared this tidbit this past week that I was seeking out healthcare and found out that the bill would cost me $1,426 to get a CT scan. And I shared that on the internet, one, because I'm just like, this is ridiculous.
yeah.
And it was a lesson to people like, hey, before you go sign up for a service, find out how much it costs to make sure that it makes sense for you to go get that service. But of course, and I wrote this in my social media today, I said, without fail, every single time that I share a personal lived experience of my own, a white guy shows up on my comments to say, in some version, well, I've never experienced this before, so you must be lying or you must misunderstand what's happening here.
Yeah.
And without fail, some white guy on my feed is like message after message after message after message being like this. I'm like, I don't even know this person.
Yeah.
I don't even know this person. And he's like, well, clearly you have a high deductible plan, or clearly you don't understand what health insurance is, clearly whatever. I said to this guy, I said, I was in benefits for several years. I do understand how health insurance plans work. I do not have a high deductible plan. And maybe you should ask more questions
Yes.
before you insert yourself into a conversation that's not about you.
That part. Mm-hmm.
And he just kept going and going. And you know what? I just never responded again.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm saying this especially because, you guys, if you guys can tell, Danielle is black and I am Asian. And it feels like in 2025, as women, particularly women of color, that we have to talk more in order to be heard. And actually, maybe we need to talk less
Yep. Yep.
and let them marinate in whatever it is narrative that they have, and let's just work on our own narratives. All right.
Love it.
So that was the first area, is effective communication. What's the second area you think people should focus on in 2025? Couples.
Healthy conflict. Again,
Yeah.
again,
Is it such a thing?
yeah, there is. I actually say, like, I love conflict. People are like, we fight. I don't want to fight anymore. I'm like, why wouldn't you want to fight? So this is the thing. It doesn't have to be fight. A conflict does not have to result in like raised voices. It doesn't have to do that. But we're two human beings trying to come together and live one life. Like, really, that's not supposed to be easy. You're gonna have differing opinions. You're gonna have different thoughts. You're gonna have different feelings about the same topic. Totally normal, right? But if I lean in to understand you, and you lean in to understand me, the compromise will have both of us in mind, right? But if I'm here trying to just make my point, and you're here trying to make your point, we're never going to come together. And any compromise that we force is going to be like, oh, I have to do this for him. He has to do this for me. Like, it's going to come with a lot of resentment and negativity. It doesn't have to.
Mhm,
Conflict
mhm.
is actually the way that we get to understand each other's point of view, especially if you're talking couples who've been married for like 25 years, 30 years. As individuals, they have changed, right? So, of course, I want to lean in to understand your changed perspective so that we can make it 35 and 40 years. Like, conflict is a way that we lean in to understand our partner. It
Mm.
actually leads to connection.
Well, that's a nugget right there. Let's discuss. The hot take here is conflict leads to connection.
Yes, absolutely.
I would venture to say that 80% of America does not believe that right now.
Oh,
Right?
word. Yes.
So let's make the case. Can you give an example, maybe in your personal life or in your professional life, obviously without naming names or anything, but like where has conflict actually led to more connection, and why should we actually want to get into conflict versus avoid it?
I have a couple right now
Mhm.
they have different political beliefs.
Oh.
It's just, it happens. Two human beings who come together, it happens. Before maybe last week, they were having trouble being heard. Like, they were like, I don't understand his point of view, and I don't understand her point of view. Like, I just don't get how she could think that way, or I don't get
Mhm,
how he could think that way. And so I encourage them to come in and just literally, sole focus is to understand your partner's point of view and to validate it, right? I don't,
ooh, that's another level you're asking for. You're
yes,
asking someone to hear it
yes,
and then understand it and then validate it.
yes,
That's
yes.
that's
And in order to validate, you've got to understand how your partner feels. So instead of talking about reproductive rights, maybe we should talk about, I don't feel safe, right? I'm scared, even. That now I'm not focused on whether reproductive rights are right or wrong. As your partner, I want to make you feel safe. And I want to ensure you that, like, I'm here for you, regardless of what's going
mhm,
on, the noise, right?
mhm,
And that's where, when I say conflict leads to connection, that's where the connection comes in. Wow, my partner sees me, they understand the way I feel, and they got my back.
mhm.
Like, that's, it's beautiful. And note, Bernadette, they actually haven't agreed. Like, that's not what's
That's right.
important.
That's right. That's right. A resolution does not have to mean agreement.
Yeah, yeah.
A resolution can be, I respect
I
where
respect you.
you are.
Hmm.
I respect you. I think that's timely because one of my videos that I put on my channel recently was me at Dave Ramsey headquarters saying how Dave Ramsey pissed me off. And so it's interesting because I got the invitation to go to Dave Ramsey headquarters and I was like, not really my vibe, but maybe there's something I can learn. And I think that for me to grow and understand kind of all perspectives in this personal finance space, I should be in spaces where I know that I'm going to have conflicting opinions with other people. So fun story is I went to the headquarters and there's like about 20 of us, all personal finance educators, and I am clearly the only one who does not go to church
Mhm.
and has certain views that other people don't agree with, and they made some of them made that very clear. And there was a part of me that was just like, well, should I just like shut up because I'm clearly in the minority here, or do I take this opportunity to share with people maybe an alternative view that they might not have heard before? And I'm not expecting them to agree with me, but why would I not even give it a shot? It was
Right.
my thought.
Right.
So when I was there, we were all tasked with having a short talk, and we were supposed to have it scripted and all this other stuff. And then 30 minutes before I'm supposed to get on stage, I'm like, you know what? The talk that I was going to do was a little safe, and I've done it 100 times. And what am I going to really get out of it if I do the same talk again? So I completely scrapped it and unscripted and unplanned talked about, and the title of my talk was How Dave Ramsey Pissed Me Off. And so, to my surprise, the the Ramsey team who was there evaluating our talk said, "I love that talk," and it gave me something to think about. And I had never considered that that might be someone's experience before.
Yeah.
And then afterwards, several of the other folks came to me and said, I'm really glad you said what you said. That's a great point.
Hmm.
So here's an alternative thing that I'm trying to share with all of you is that conflict might in fact lead to connection. Conflict might also lead to change sometimes.
Yeah. Absolutely.
The worst case scenarios were exactly in the same spot that we were. The best case scenario is that we actually understand each other, respect each other, heard something different, learned something new. So I think there's a lot more to gain from kind of heading into conflict versus trying to avoid it. So I love that you
Absolutely.
shared that.
Absolutely.
Last one, what is the third area in 2025 that you think people, particularly couples, should spend some time on?
Yeah. When you threw, I wish you had said four, because while I do think respect is really important, right?
Mm-hmm.
It is the thing that makes us friends. I'm interested in you, you matter, all of those things. That's respect, right, for the other individual. But I'm going to stand here and I'm going to say, if you're going to focus on the third thing in 2025, let it be intimacy. I don't mean to, I'm not a sex therapist. I'm not crossing that line. Um, but intimacy is about so much more than just sex.
Mm-hmm.
Most of it leads to sex, sure. But
Mm-hmm.
I'm talking about, like, how do we say hello to each other? How do we say goodbye in the morning? How do we come back? Like, some people, literally, I've had people in my office like create some kind of like fist bump thing. That's fine. Whatever. It doesn't always have to be like the long kiss, though long kisses are important, right? But we
Mm-hmm.
have to pay attention, which is why every couple that comes to see me, we spend the full 50 minutes, the first 50 minutes, and they walk me through their love story. And they both interject. Like, it's a requirement for them to interject details. Like, oh yeah, she was wearing this red sweater. It was really hot. Like, I want to hear all the things, right? And even those couples who come in like at it, they're like, we're not getting along, blah, 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 blah. When they tell their love story, it's like this levity, this light, warm air comes in the room, and they remember a little bit of like why they're in this to begin with. And it's just really important to constantly remind yourself. I always tell my clients, like, you have to constantly date each other, right? Even when life gets busy and the kids have soccer and lacrosse and all the things,
Mm-hmm.
right? Taking the time to date each other, even if it's a Netflix and chill, that's fine. But
Mm-hmm.
taking the time to do that is really important. I do not at all mean to minimize. Like, the kisses have to be longing. Like, the 6-second kiss is actually a thing, right?
Oh. Mm-hmm.
And it's
Mm-hmm.
harder than you think. Like, you start losing breath. Like, that's a long time to be like all up in somebody's face. but but just to focus on the length of the even the embrace. Like,
Mm-hmm.
apparently it's a 20-second embrace and a 6-second kiss that really brings you to that, like, that next level of intimacy. But even like the hand on the lower back. Like, I see you. You walk in a room and I smile. Like, all of those things pour into this like intimacy bucket. And I just think it's not that we don't want to. It's like we forget
We
that
forget.
that's a thing. So,
Yeah. So I have an unsolicited tip for everybody here is if you want to learn more about intimacy, you should get into K-dramas because there is a Instagram post. It was this young black guy who he's like the caption was like, "Oh, me watching American, sex scenes or whatever," and he's just like eating popcorn. He's like bored or whatever, and then he's like, "Me watching a K drama for getting ready for them to hold hands for the first time." And he's like, "Oh, oh!" Like and I think you make me just have this light bulb in my head. The reason that AJ and I love watching K dramas and we actually stopped watching American television altogether is because it takes like 10 episodes to build intimacy.
mhm.
So then it feels like when they have their first kiss, like which is usually like literally like 10 episodes in, we're like, oh my God, like finally,
Yes.
like.
Yes.
Whereas like 30 seconds into an episode in like an American film, it's like they're already like at each other's throats. And I love that you said that. And something I'll share personally is recently I said to AJ, and I said, I'm a little bit sad about this, and I feel a little bit embarrassed to say this. And I said to him, I've never heard someone say, I love you, Bernadette. I've heard a lot of people tell me they love me, but not with my name.
Huh.
Like, Bernadette, I love you, or I love you, Bernadette. Like, of course, AJ has told me, oh, I love you like 100 times, but he's never said, I love you, Bernadette.
Interesting.
And he was like, huh, I could see why that would be something you would want. Like, that seems like it's so simple, but like we've all heard some version of I love you, but someone to say your full name to your face, like in your eyes and say,
Yeah.
I love you, Bernadette, not I love you. I
Right.
love you,
Yeah.
And so now AJ, every time he sees me, he's like, I love you, Bernadette. I'm like, okay, all right. That
Okay,
was too much.
overkill.
It's too much. So, I think you're right that there is intimacy that is beyond just like physical touch and all of that. And I think in 2025, I think that is actually a really important message because from the conversations I've had with many women since I talk to a lot of women in my day job, is that they think that this is a hot take. They think they don't agree about money,
Yeah.
but what I actually think that they're not agreeing about in their relationships are what you said: healthy conflict,
Yeah.
effective communication, and real intimacy,
Hmm.
which includes I heard a new term called financial intimacy, where it is something to consider. If you're not willing to take your clothes off financially,
I love that.
is this a relationship that is going to make it? So it
Yep.
doesn't mean that you have to share bank accounts, but if you're like not even willing to share, like, well, why are you so afraid?
Yeah.
Or what are your financial fears? Like that is something that people need to talk about. So I
Right.
love that.
Thank you.
And then for you in 2025, I'm curious, like, what are your goals for your practice, for where you're going with your own thought leadership? Like, where is Hope Psychotherapy and my Hope Station going?
I think that Hope Station, Hope Psychotherapy are going to a place where I two places. I want to be able to help more people be more efficient. So there'll be some group work so people can join a group as opposed to leaning into individual therapy. It gives people get so much from groups and knowing that other people also share some of their pain points and getting advice from other people as well makes you feel less alone. So I love that. And then um, I, as a therapist, would love to also extend myself into some different spaces. Like I've dabbled into the financial space a little bit, but I would also like to explore other areas in which I can help because as somebody with an MBA, I know there's a lot of anxiety and feelings that come up in the workplace. So I want to explore a
Mm-hmm.
little bit of that too. But I also want to keep doing more of what I'm doing because it feels good.
And you're great at it.
Thank you.
And we need you there. So, if people want to find out more about you, where can they reach you?
I am reachable on my website at myhopestation.com. Also, please follow me on Instagram at myhopestation, and sign up for my newsletter. My newsletter comes out twice a month. and it gives some good tidbits. Sometimes it's funny, sometimes it's serious, but yeah, that's the best place to catch up with me and where I'm going and where the business is going as well.
I love it. Well, and I can attest, I am a subscriber on her newsletter, and I do forward it to my friends and say, see, listen to her. If you're not going to listen to me, listen
I
to
know.
her.
I know. And therapy doesn't always have to be so serious. Sometimes we can make light of
Right.
things.
That's right. There's before my last. She was actually a stand-up comedian before she became a therapist,
I love
and yeah, it was the best. It was
that.
great. Like half the time I left my therapy and I was just like, I just feel like awesome.
Yeah.
So I really appreciate you having this conversation. Thank you for coming. And for those of you who are not already subscribed to the channel, if you haven't, please press the button below if you like this content. I will put all of Danielle's resources in the show notes, and stay tuned for more episodes if you're interested in growing your finances, growing your worth, and having healthier relationships in 2025 and beyond. See you next time.
Bye.